These are still the major cancers for both male and female. And this session deals with what are we going to do about it. And the handout that each of you should have a copy of goes through front and back on each of those pages, and also if you want to write, that's what those lines off to this side are. But what this is a compilation of what science studies tells us as far as prevention of these various cancers. And so as we go through it, we'll go through whether it be prostate or lung or colon. We've seen these already. I'm just going to bump past these. So we're going to go directly to your first column on your handout, preventing breast cancer. Probably one thing that's come down in the last few years is they always felt that moderate drinking, 1 drink, possibly 2 drinks a day, was not harmful. Now science has changed its conclusion and said that even moderate drinking, even light drinking, increases a lady's risk of breast cancer. So that now they have to recommend ZIP as far as alcohol consumption if you want to have the best outcome in avoiding breast cancer. Well, this research goes right in the face of wine, whether it's 6 ounces of wine, 8 ounces of beer. Wine is alcohol, regardless of the source. And the benefit, well, that's where you get to benefit from. It's the polyphenols, it's the antioxidants in grape juice. If they really want the benefit, they should be drinking Welch's grape juice, not Manischewitz. Number 2, very important, vigorous exercise. Vigorous meaning at least walking to the point where you get your heart rate up to 180 minus your age. So if you're 60, that'd be your heart rate of 120. If you're 70, that's a heart rate of 110. Just to give you an idea of the definition of vigorous. Must work up to a sweat. Well, in North Carolina, this summer, you can go outside and think about mowing the yard, not quite, but with the humidity we have, it's easy to perspire. So this is not a hard one. But what I'm talking about is you're basically raising your body temperature enough that your body wants to cool itself off. Improving circulation, blood flow, and improving the immune response.
How long would you recommend?
If you're in this vigorous phase, we're talking about 30 minutes. If you're out gardening, people are out there gardening for 2 hours. We figure the person gets as much benefit out there in the garden as they do going for their vigorous walk or just jog or swim or bike or whatever.
If you're out in your garden, you're be wet from sweat.
Well, you got the sweat component, but have you hoed the corn fast enough to get a little bit of heart component?
Well, if you're,
No, if you're working, yeah. Okay. Hormones, and what have we learned? Number 1, we've learned that ladies taking birth control, usually in their younger years, predisposes them to breast cancer. In fact, we have adults here, children have gone. A lady taking birth control pills in her younger years usually notices an increase in her breast size, and that's only due to overdoing the estrogen level. The way you keep a lady from getting pregnant, besides abstinence, obviously, is dealing with the progesterone level. A lot of birth control pills that gave both estrogen and progesterone, when really all they needed to do was just give the progesterone and not have the negative effect. Hormone replacement therapy, in general, was overrated as far as the cancer cause. I'm not saying it doesn't cause breast cancer, but it was overrated. Meaning that ladies that were on hormone replacement therapy after menopause or surgical menopause have less effect than what we initially thought. So I guess that's kind of a positive finding. And if you are going to use hormones at all for any reason, you should be using what we call the bioidentical. Bioidentical meaning the same chemical composition of what your body put out is the same thing you should be trying to put in. For example, in the olden days, we had Premarin, and we had Provera. Provera was the progesterone component, but it wasn't progesterone, it was a progesterin. Because of the negative side effects, a lot of ladies says, I don't want that one. I want just the other one because it takes care of my hot flashes. And so they were taking just the estrogen component without taking the progesterone. So a tip, if you ever need, for whatever reason, estrogen, always take progesterone. Never take estrogen by itself. I don't care for any reason, because you have to have the protection. P-R-O-G-E-S-T-E-R-O-N-E, progesterone. Progesterone is the counteracting hormone to estrogen. Everything that estrogen does on this side of the fence, progesterone does on the opposite. Estrogen makes you gain weight. Progesterone helps you lose weight. Estrogen tends to make you more moody. Progesterone tends to work as a mild antidepressant. It's a counteracting, balancing hormone that you're made to deal with in your years, younger years.
Why in the world do they give women that HRT after they've had breast replacement? Because it never made sense to me. When that was considered one of the things causing breast cancer, they went back to giving them that after they'd even had, say, a mastectomy or
Right.
biopsies. They went back to giving them that.
To me, it's too great of a risk. There's too many other creative ways to try to deal with hot flashes. I can almost guarantee the ladies that went back to it were dealing with something hormonal. But there are other ways to handle it. One of the best ways is to do the bioidentical route.
And
That's,
how do you get a doctor to do that? Because the
you don't get a
HRT
doctor to do that,
you know,
except this kind of doctor. There are very few gynecologists who buy all the theories I'm telling you. I can support myself very well from research, but that doesn't mean it gets done out there in real life. In fact, I have gynecologists that patients are between me and them, and they will come back and say, well, I guess that progesterone stuff seems to be helping you. Maybe, you know. I'm not reading any different books. It's just how you look at how to treat people. But if you have any type of breast cancer, tumor, or whatever, it should make you very cautious on using any hormone. And if you are going to use a hormone, you definitely need to go the bioidentical route and probably talk to someone who has a little more understanding than what you're going to get out of a book usually.
I went to my doctor when I was 50, get baseline.
Mm-hmm.
And I told her I thought I was premenopausal.
Mm-hmm.
And I had read this book, right? I got the book from Martin. And he was a gynecologist for 26 years or so, was listening to his patients.
Mm-hmm.
And he did all his, he helped young people that they were getting hysterectomies when they were young and they didn't need to.
Right.
He said that he listened to his older patients who were still taking, he put them on progesterone because he did
Mhm.
hormonal studies.
Yep.
And stuff. And so I read his book and I decided that if I was
Menopausal.
that I was going to go to progesterone. And my doctor said, well, let's wait till the test came back. So the test came back and she forgot that I had told her what I thought I was. And she said, well, you're premenopausal.
Mhm.
I'll put you on some estrogen. And so we had an eye-to-eye, 10-minute of I didn't budge and she didn't budge.
Mm-hmm.
And so she said, well, we'll wait a year and see what happens. And then she says, I would be doing my due diligence. I would want a mother on. I said, that's fine for you and your mother. I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
So I started on a progesterone cream based off of what that doctor said. And I had not one hot flash the whole time I was through
Mhm.
menopause. And so I stopped going to her and went to another gynecologist. And he was going to put me on like vaginal.
Mm-hmm. Estrace or something.
Yes. And I took about 2 doses of that, and my period started again. I said, no way.
I'm on the wrong thing.
Yeah, so I went back to doing the cream and stayed on that. But his thought process made so much sense because one affects the other.
Of course.
You can keep the other in balance
Yeah.
by taking the progesterone. So
another advantage while we're talking hormones, and that is that when you take progesterone, it makes the estrogen either in your body or if you have to take a supplement about 4 times as effective. So we can take a lady who's on relatively high dose estrogen, give her the progesterone, and cut this estrogen down by about 1/4. Anything I can do to reduce the risk of change in the hormone-sensitive tissue, very important. So that's the reason why I put bioidentical on my list here, so we understand there are things available that are the same chemicals as in your body. A lot of the synthetic ones are not what's in your body. Number 3, well 4 here. Weight or fat distribution. The apple versus the pear. If you tend to carry your weight high, then it's around what we call the visceral organs. It's called visceral fat. Subcutaneous fat is pinch and inch, okay? That's subcutaneous under the skin. Visceral fat is what's all around your internal organs that you can't see, except your inches are more than what you'd want. It's that visceral fat that gives you disease, diabetes, heart disease, and cancer. Ladies, well, men too, ladies are more prone to do this. Men tend to have a more visceral fat. We call it a beer belly. They tend to carry their weight relatively. You see them from the backside and they look pretty good until they turn sideways and you go, what's that? And so a man that looks like that, that's visceral fat. Some men get heavier below, but ladies tend to be more in this way, hips and thighs. That fat, it's not good, but it's not as harmful as the abdominal fat. They have less diabetes, they have less heart disease, they have less cancer if they carry their fat lower. That's apple versus pear shape. Muscle to fat ratio is really where it's at. You can get caught up on numbers on the scale, but it's having the right amount of muscle for the right amount of fat. And a good percent body fat, if you work out in a gym, if you have a way of checking your percent body fat, a man should be somewhere between 10 to 16%, and a lady should be somewhere between 16 to 22%. If you're at that percentage of body fat,
Is that BMI?
no, that's body mass index.
No, but I didn't know.
Okay, we'll cover that in just a little bit. If you're in that percentage of body fat and you happen to have more muscle because you worked out in a farm when you were a young girl and the scale says you're 10 pounds too much, I'll go, no, you're just fine. If you don't have a lot of muscle and you're very petite and you're 8 pounds down off the scale, I should weigh this much, I'm saying no, you're at the correct weight when you have the right amount of muscle and the right amount of fat. You're not going to get penalized for your bones or your muscle. That's not what we're talking about here. So height, weight, tables are so good. Gail mentioned the BMI. Body mass index is a formula that uses height versus weight. Has nothing to do with your percent body fat. But the reason we use it so frequently is because every time you go to a doctor's office, what do you get? Height and weight, height and weight. You know your own height and weight, so you can do your own BMI. So it's a handier criteria or identifier, and most of the time it's correct. For football players, it's grossly off. Had a guy in the office the other day, and I mean, this guy, you know, I wear a 42 or a 40. Yeah, I wear a 40 coat. He wears a 56. I mean, you know, literally, I imagine if we compared shoulder to shoulder, he would be at least 6 inches broader than me. I'm not going to tell this guy to weigh what I weigh when he's my height. In fact, he was shorter than me. And if I tell him to weigh 150, he says, now I am thinking I'm a cancer patient. Okay? For him to weigh 200 would have been good because he was I think over 300 or had come down from that when I saw him. I mean, this is a guy that goes trotting over the football field, you know, I mean, one of those kind of guys. BMI is totally invalid for them, but for most of us, height versus weight ratio, unless we're really muscled up or either very large frame, is valid. And I'm not sure I got a BMI. It's in the computer somewhere. I don't know if I have it in this presentation.
How do you know whether you have the right amount of fat and muscle ratio? When there's a scale.
The simplest way to do that at home without getting fancy or having any kind of meter to tell you percent body fat, it's right here, and how much can you pinch? It's the good old Special K test, what they did 30 years ago, and try to convince you to eat their cereal. If you can pinch more than an inch, then you've got more than what you need. Gail, you probably don't have this problem. I can almost guarantee it. But I will tell you this. There are some ladies who are 5'4" and weigh 100 pounds, 120 pounds, excuse me. So they're at the right height for the right weight, but they still can be over fat because they have so low muscle mass. But if you've got enough muscle mass and you're in the right category, you should be good. But that's the unusual. So fat distribution, how do we carry our fat? And then fat to muscle ratio is your best criteria to determine your weight, not the scale, not numbers, etc., etc. Otherwise, you can be off one way or the other. And by the way, it gets a little bit harder on us as we get older because we start losing height. So what are we going to do with our weight, you know?
So when you do that,
Your rising stroke, how do you accomplish that?
The same way we accomplish exercise. You have to go out there and exercise and build your muscle and lose a pound. See, because basically, think of it this way. If you maintain your muscle mass through exercise, then you're losing either water weight, which we do, or you're losing fat weight. So if you maintain muscle and lose fat, it's going to work out, you know?
I thought there was.
And I'm old enough to realize that the skin doesn't stay where you have it. You start looking at your neck pretty soon and go, oh my, you know, not young anymore. You're ready for your facelift, huh? So I just wear a tie and look pretty good. Anyway, the point is that it's not going to put everything back to where you want it when you were 28. But you can still have the right amount of fat and the right amount of muscle. Anything over age 40, we start losing this stuff called elastin. And that's not the skin, that's the membrane underneath the skin that holds it where you want it. How's that? Okay. Melatonin and sleep. Melatonin, I should probably ask Gail for her hand up. She's probably got it here, doesn't she? The point I'm getting at is that melatonin is one of the factors that affects sleep. But melatonin, thank you. I can see what Gail did here. Well, we got a few. Yeah, right. The first items here. What does melatonin do for me? It strengthens the immune system, so that's going to help with the cancer. It improves DNA repair. That helps with cancer. Protects against free radicals. She just got laid out better than what I did. That's good. Coping with stress, so we're not going to touch that. Osteoporosis, etc., etc. So, in this situation here, when we say suppress cancer growth, we're specifically talking about breast cancer here, and melatonin being more than just something that causes a sedative effect and helps you have better quality sleep, also improves your bone, it does that too, also improves your immune system and decreases your cancer risk. So taking melatonin can be helpful. Our discussion last night was demonstrating that melatonin goes down radically as we age. From age 7 to 70, you drop about, close to 70. You go from over 100 production all the way down to like 10. It's a major drop as we go along from that standpoint. Okay.
You also said,
Al?
that if you take melatonin,
Yes.
then your body can stop producing it.
Take-
Because it's supplementing.
That's true for anything, whether it's thyroid. The more melatonin you take, the body tries to keep a certain blood level. So when you take melatonin, your pineal gland, there's two areas where you make melatonin in your body. The the retina of the eye, and the pineal gland. If you draw a line ear to ear and go through your mouth, where it intersects at the base of your brain, you've got this gland the size of a good-sized pea. And that makes the melatonin. And it gets a signal from the retina. When the light level goes down, when it becomes dark, that gland starts producing. Just the opposite's true. And I hope you haven't had to do what I do sometimes. We try to make it rare, is you got to be somewhere in the morning. I'm talking about someone that's not going to make it. And you're driving to Florida to see your relative before they pass away. and you're driving throughout the night, and at 3 o'clock in the morning, you are dead. You're doing good to just try to, stay awake, one of those kind of nights. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, you've gone for another 3 hours, the sun starts to come up, and what happens to you? You get a second wind. You go, I go, wait a minute. I'm 3 hours more tired, but yet I feel like I can make it now. Well, you shut off the melatonin. You shut off the melatonin.
Because the sun's not up yet. She's taking her walks in the morning when it's dark. And so
Yeah, but the problem is she's walking west and the sun comes up in the east.
she's walking because she's got to get
Alcohol.
before she goes to school.
I'm teasing her. Alcohol and breast cancer risk, a meta-analysis. That's another way of saying we've looked at 50 or 100 studies, and this is the conclusion, this is a consensus statement from a variety of studies, not just one study in one place or one part of the world. So a meta-analysis did this. It says alcohol intake in grams per day, okay? So therefore, well, it's really deciliter here. So when you're looking at, no, it's right, it's per day. This is how much alcohol you take per day. So one drink of alcohol is approximately 10 grams. So if the meta-analysis for increasing breast cancer risk, if this red line and this white line were the same, then alcohol would not be having any effect on breast cancer. At one drink, you're here. At 2 drinks, 3 drinks, 4 drinks, 5 drinks, 6 drinks, your relative risk has climbed from 1 to 1.5. This is where the data comes in, where they're saying you can't afford to have one drink. You increase your risk of getting breast cancer with one drink. One drink is not healthy. Moderate, even light drinking is no longer acceptable, and they're starting to say it, which I'm thankful for. The second box there in preventing of breast cancer is using healthy fats. The omega-3 fat is vitally important. Research that's come out on omega-3 fats in fish oils has just proved that the fish oil concept is bogus, it's been bogus, and will continue to be bogus. It is not a good place for omega-3 fats. The people that get the most amount of omega-3 fish fats do not have prevention of disease. And if you want that research, go to nutritionfacts.org, Dr. Michael Gregory, and he presents that whole paradox that's gone on. If you like to go online, and it's no expense and a good site. But the omega-3 fats that are helpful to you are not animal-based. Therefore, we've got our flaxseed, our chia seed, our nuts, and this isn't the roasted, salted, and deep-fried ones, and sunflower seeds. Of this list here, chia seeds are the highest omega-3 fat per tablespoon. Yes, ma'am.
I know that you can, well, I mix,
Okay.
cheese seeds
Okay.
and put them in the fridge for
You're making yourself some tapioca almost.
and then I put it on my cereal.
Okay.
Now, could you, when we were talking about making bread, could you use the chia seeds to make bread?
You're asking someone who doesn't want you to have a mistake or a problem. I don't know.
Oh, not necessarily.
When we use any kind of a seed like that, we use it for its gelatinous, hold together, egg-like qualities. So if you're making something that you want to replace an egg, for example, let's say you're making a burger and yours always fall apart. Well, if you'll put chia or flaxseed and grind it up with your nuts and everything else, you're probably going to have a little better glue.
So if it's in that gelatinous,
Gelatin-like.
yeah, if you put that in with your bread, it might work.
You'll have to let me know. Make a small loaf first in case it doesn't work. So these are your omega-3 fats. They're essential for the immune system, and therefore they help us with any cancer, obviously breast cancer here. Here's one of the very interesting things, and it's interesting because some Adventists who are vegans have high LDL levels. low density lipoprotein. This is the cholesterol that we talked about, cholesterol being oxidized at lunch. This is the cholesterol component. When this is oxidized, this is your problem. We use the word in general, which would be the whole cholesterol picture, which is your HDL, your LDL, your IDL, all your different densities and the whole cholesterol gamut. And then they start breaking it out in HDL2 and HDL3, and it even goes from there. But the take-home message is that LDL cholesterol, when it is high, it stimulates breast cancer cells to grow. So what do? Typically, most people on a plant-based diet have low LDL levels. It comes hand in hand. If the LDL level stays up in a vegan, it means I'm dealing with inflammation somewhere in the body. Doesn't tell me where, just tells me I'm dealing with an inflammatory response here, and what are we going to do about it? Now, I have all different kinds of vegans that I work with. I've got vegans who are eating a lot of processed food, and then I have other vegans who are eating close to a raw diet. And so if I have a vegan that comes in and says, I just can't get my blood levels down, I've seen this happen as much as a week or two. You put them on a totally raw diet, and it's amazing what happens to these things. So that tells me, what am I doing? Well, first of all, they're not getting any cholesterol, and secondarily, what has to be happening is that raw diet must be doing something about the inflammation in the system. It's calming things down. Because you don't eat LDL per se. LDL is made by your liver. So what's telling the liver to make the LDL? Something's got to be.
What do you consider high?
What's that?
What is considered high LDL?
In a blood level, we usually use the LDL, which is the bad guy, so to speak. The HDL would be the good guy. You're like a 1-to-2 ratio. In general terms, if your good guy is 50, then you can up to have 100 of the bad guy. Medical science says right now we want you less than 100. The interesting thing about medical science, they never would have said that if they didn't have statin drugs to give you. Because those levels did not come about until they had the drug to back up their mouth. And I'm going, that's a poor way to run your business.
And then once you get below 100, the doc says you really need to be 70.
That's correct. Then they push you a little bit harder because they say you are prone to this disease or that disease. And then the next research comes out by this guy named Dr. Greger, and he says, okay, so we push you to 70. Now what? And he asked the question, does this help you live longer? Do you have less heart attacks? The answer is no. So pushing you this hard and taking, your paycheck once a year for just statin drugs, it doesn't help. So why take a drug that you don't get benefit from that damages your heart muscle? That's the real question for medicine right now. Why are you giving heart patients drugs that you know damage heart muscle? It'll damage any detoxifying organ too. But muscle is where most people have the problem. And they also know that it decreases the body's coenzyme Q10 level, which helps to deliver oxygen to a variety of things, every cell in the body. So this is not a good drug. And just because you make the numbers right on this test does not make people healthy. So LDL cholesterol, this type of cholesterol stimulates breast cancer cells, obviously, to grow. The last one on this particular page is soy foods. Soy foods are a phytoestrogen. A phyto meaning plant. They're a plant-based estrogen, and they improve the survival rate of people who get breast cancer. I happen to believe they also do the opposite. I also believe that they are preventive for breast cancer. Our star pupils used to be the Japanese ladies who almost never got breast cancer until after World War II. And it wasn't just because Hiroshima got blown up and they all got radiated. It's because they've totally changed their diet, they've totally westernized. You start going through the whole list. When you realize the size of Japan and the population that little place supports, You know, we're used to think of the United States. Japan, let me get my numbers right here. Japan is, what, half the size of California? Something like that. It's not even that big, probably. And you read about these various countries. You read about Germany, and that's like North and South Carolina together or something. And we look at them as a whole country. The problem is this, that with population density that they have and their food supply and what they're trying to do, it does set themselves up for being a lot more vulnerable to pollution than what we have. We have pollution in the United States, but the United States is huge compared to most places. And they talk about population density. Anyone that flies in an airplane realizes that this place is not crowded. We have crowded into a very small area. Then I heard this one statistic. It was amazing. With the density of New York City, as far as population per square mile, you could fit the whole world population in the state of Texas. Let me say that again. If you kept people as crowded or living as close together as what they do in Brooklyn, that density, so many people per square mile, you can put the world population, all 7 billion people, in the state of Texas. I'm trying to make a point here that we are not crowded, we're not overpopulated, we're not underfed. It's all how we use our food, it's all how we use our land, it's all how we take care of our neighbors, it's all that. And I'm not a tree hugger. I cut them down on a regular basis. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about being irresponsible. And the biggest way you can be responsible is by taking care of your health and eating a plant-based diet. If you really want to change the world, and that's when even the World Health Organization came through and demonstrated that the greatest production of carbon dioxide, CO2 pollution, was guessed from where? It's not from airplanes, it's not from SUVs, it's not from transportation, it's from meat production. If you really want to change your world, you'll be a vegetarian if you really want to take environmental responsibility. Not stop driving your SUV or the tractor trailer running down the road or flying in an airplane. Those are all minor compared to meat production in this world. It's the good old United Nations came through. Hopefully they're telling the truth on that one. It looked like a valid argument, but yeah. They ranked them. What percentage does this? What percentage does this? What percentage does this? You know, heating houses and all this. And then somebody gets brave, and I admire them, they write a whole article saying, well, carbon dioxide is good. We have to have it. What if all the trees had no carbon dioxide? They couldn't produce oxygen. So there's a whole I don't need to get too political, but it's a whole fallacy going on. Okay, other interesting things that we learned in my search on just the prevention end of breast cancer. Breast cancer stem cells, or let's talk about stem cells in general for cancer. Stem cells are an undifferentiated cell that usually can go in many different ways. They become a nose, an ear, an eye, everything. That's a stem cell. But a stem cell, because it's undifferentiated, doesn't have the same problems with your immune system or even chemotherapy. Because chemotherapy cannot kill a stem cell until it becomes more differentiated and that type of thing. So we have residual cancer-causing stem cells in your system even after we chemo people half to death. And then they wonder why 2 years later they say they have a reoccurrence. I go, I beg your pardon. This wasn't a reoccurrence. It just was below the detectable level of anything you got to scan me with. That's what this really is. This is not a new problem. But look what the research shows. This was fascinating to me. The sulforaphane from broccoli, they took a mixture of broccoli sprouts and juiced them. And they gave it to ladies going into surgery for breast reduction because they wanted to find out, and this is important for any supplement you take, is the supplement I'm putting in my mouth getting to where it belongs in my body, and is it capable of doing what I need to have done? We make that assumption. I eat this, it's supposed to go to here and take care of this. Well, that's kind of a leap, okay? So we try to, so the ladies that went in for breast reduction surgery, they gave them their drink of broccoli sprouts an hour or two before they went into surgery. They went into surgery, had breast tissue removed, and then they analyzed the breast tissue for their thing. Guess what they found out? The broccoli had gone in the digestion, in the bloodstream, and gone to the breast tissue. This is the cleanest, surest research that I can tell you that any lady who is fighting either breast cancer or would like to just really bump their immune system up should be using broccoli sprouts. Absolutely incredible food for prevention of cancer in general and specifically breast cancer. Heterocyclic amines, we've known about this for a long time. Anytime you superheat a fat, I think animal fats are worse, anytime you superheat a fat, whether it's on your grill out back or in a frying pan, you create a different chemical from the fat. It's not just olive oil anymore. It's not just lard anymore. It's actually a different chemical, and that's why they call them these heterocyclic amines that affect the breast tissue and increase the risk of cancer. So grilling out is not a great thing as far as how your body handles the cancer. Green vegetables, whether it be broccoli, collard greens, are excellent for your liver and liver detoxifiers. So whether it be beet tops or collards or kale or Swiss chard or whatever, vitally important. And then a whole food plant-based diet just makes good sense because that's the way you're going to get most of your ingredients for the area of prevention. And then we've already talked about the Rave Diet. RaveDiet.com is something you can go for resources. Plant Pure Planet or Planet Pure, something like that. Have you seen? It's a YouTube by, let's see, Dr. Colin, the China Study doctor. His son did this video. And he went to, was it Kentucky? Anyway, he tried to do something legislative-wise in a state to get this. They turned him down. So he came over to North Carolina, and it was, I think, in Duke area, and he was doing these 10-day rehab program. Bring a person in, put them on a plant-based diet for 10 days, do their cholesterol before, cholesterol after, was gaining momentum that way. It's an interesting DVD to watch. I think it's Plant Pure Nation. I'll have to look up, I should have that. What do you know about preventing breast cancer? Number one, maintain ideal weight. Daily aerobic exercise. The heart rate that I gave you would qualify for that. 180 minus your age. Hours in a restrictive bra. Some people have said that wearing bras increases your risk of breast cancer. What I would propose to tell you is that if you restrict lymphatic flow, that you are increasing your risk of breast cancer. So not all bras restrict constructive flow, but if you take it off in the evening and you've got marks on you, then you're restricting something. So that's an easy way to tell. Manage and decrease stress effects in your life. That's easier said than done, I realize, but important. Adequate rest and sleep, and help to deal with the emotional issues. Sometimes I go back and forth wondering how much is between the ears and how much is what I just ate for my meal, because both can have obviously a devastating effect on us. And sometimes you go, wait a minute, I eat all this healthy food and I stay stressed out. Am I really helping myself? Okay, next one. We're going to take a look at colon cancer. That should be what, on your second page? Okay. Most important concept probably on that page is probably transit time. Even if you eat something that's not healthy for you, if it stays in you less time, it's going to have less problem. So the higher the fiber diet, Even if you just ate the steak, but the whole rest of the meal was greens, the steak will cause you less problem than if you ate the steak and no greens, is what I'm saying. That is not to tell you how to eat a bad diet. That's just telling you that transit time is usually quite slow in America. And if you want to check your transit time, you can eat corn and don't chew it too thoroughly. You can take a dose of charcoal and see when you see it. Beets work, but beets are a little bit harder to tell. The point is that ideal transit time for most of us probably should be 24 to 36 hours, a day to a day and a half. And you can be having an elimination every day and still not have a good transit time. Yes, you're not constipated, things are moving, but when I say transit time, when I eat it to when I eliminate it, hopefully would be at 36 hours or better.
What if it's faster?
Excuse me?
What if it's faster?
Faster than that, as long as I'm not dealing with bowel wall inflammation or irritation, I consider it to your advantage. And soft stools is not diarrhea. Some people come in and just because they have soft stools, they think something's going on when they're used to having almost too well-formed stools. That's not the goal here. How many of you worked on a farm when you were a kid? How many of you were on a farm when you were a kid? Okay, the cows eat dry hay all winter long. The first 2 weeks in the pasture, what do the cow pies look? That's why I call them pies. What do the cow pies look like? Exactly. Is that cow sick? You're out there with a Lamodal and trying to slow them down? No. Totally normal response for that cow when it starts grazing on fresh grass is to make what we call cow pies. Now you would call that diarrhea. Okay? How many of you have changed baby diapers? Okay. When they start getting formed, you almost get worried, don't you, Mom? Because we want that stuff to come out like cooked pumpkin. That is normal. That is healthy stool. Well, then why do we become adults and think we can do something totally different? And that's normal. Anyway, transit time. Stool size, colon cancer increases with low volume of stools. I'm talking a lot about Dr. Greger. He's got an article on quarter pounders, and he's not talking about McDonald's. He says that males, I guess male and female, if your stool volume is less than 1/4 pounder, you are dealing with an increased risk of obviously colon cancer. So they say it differently. The size of the hospital is inversely proportionate to the size of the stool. Let me say it again. The size of the hospital is inversely proportionate to the size of the stool. Inversely means opposite, obviously. So if you have a large hospital, what does that tell you about the people that live in that area? If you have a whole lot of hospitals in the country, what does it tell you about the people that live in the country? America's constipated, folks. Dennis Burkitt, the brand man back in, was it Korean War? Was trying to figure out why all our men on the battleships were having all this problem. And so he was the guy who brought fiber back into things that you got to have. These poor guys at 22 years old should be nothing wrong with their bowels except they can't live on pasta and steak. They need to have their salads and they're fresh and beans, good high fiber food and that type of thing. But he goes, you examine a population that got large hospitals, and we Americans have large hospitals. Colon cancer increases with low volume. Not just having a bowel movement every day. We're talking about, are you having enough volume to keep things good? Phytate, excuse me? What? Hopefully, that's the goal. Phytates, compounds found in whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds. These are preventive for colon cancer because they're going to do a few things. They're going to give you bulk, they're going to give you fiber, and they're going to give you less problems with the cells along the colon wall. Heme iron. Iron is actually a toxin to the body. You need very little of it, but heme iron means it comes from hemoglobin. In plain English, animal blood. So heme iron or animal iron causes hydroxy radicals and promoting cancer in the bowel. If you're going to eat any iron, do not eat it from animal source. The concept of giving people liver when they are anemic is faulty. And we have done it repeatedly. And most people need to look at what the problem is, and the problem usually isn't that they're low in iron. And taking iron pills are very caustic to your system. The most I do for people is give them blackstrap molasses, try to build them up. And I'd rather take a month to build you up than trying to get there in a week or two, even a couple months. The other thing is that many people, when they go from a diet that is meat-based to a vegetarian-based, people do not get more anemic, they tend to get less anemic with less iron in their system. So it doesn't surprise me if your iron level actually improved being a vegetarian than it did before you were. Yes, ma'am.
I do blackstrap molasses a couple weeks before I go to the blood.
Mm-hmm.
I've been rejected a few times because my iron is too low.
Okay.
It has to be at least like 12 to get it. And a lot of times I can't get that, not that high. But last time I did another blackstrap, like 2 weeks
Mm-hmm.
before. 1 tablespoon a day enough.
It should be, because that's about as much iron as you can absorb. Maximum I would do would be 2 tablespoons, but yeah. But see, the problem is your hemoglobin's 14? Well, yeah. But see, yes, the higher the hemoglobin, the more likely you are to have problems with heart disease. I see men now 15, 16, 17, I'm going, my, I'd be happy if you're 12. And if ladies are between 11 to 13, that's really where this high hemoglobin is not really healthy for us. So I don't know where the Red Cross has got their specific gravity solution, because put a drop on the top. If it floats, you're good. If it sinks, no. If it sinks, you're good, because it's heavier. Do they actually look? Okay. Okay, then they give you a direct readout. Okay. I tell you what, for a man, if it comes in at 15, 16, I tell him to go make a donation. Go give a pint of blood every 2 months until you come down to a normal level. I would like you at 12, 13 area. Now, the second thing is changing your diet should help to regulate that too. Now, if you lived in Denver, Colorado, we might cut you a little bit of slack because you're a mile high in oxygen and all that. If you don't smoke and nothing else that would cause your oxygen to be low, then it really, I mean, I would go after diet at that point. Anybody recognize this? All the above is true. That is the tuber. A turmeric tuber looks very much like ginger. You are correct. That is the tuber, and that is the ground dried tuber, and it is that yellow, or you can get it a whole different grades. It can go from almost reddish right on through to pale yellow. So it depends on where it's grown, the soil it's grown in, et cetera, et cetera. When you're in Costa Rica and you're in the open market, they have a turmeric that goes from reddish all the way through to different shades of yellow. So it's just a matter of where it was grown and probably how much magnesium is in the soil. But the point is that is one of your best anti-inflammatory foods, eaten whole, not as in the tuber there, but eaten when they grind that tuber up to make sure that your powder is not, it doesn't need to be an extract. That the name for that is curcumin longus. That's the genus species. So when you buy a bottle and it says curcumin on it, that is turmeric. Curcuminoid, yes, that's what you get. Curcuminoid is where they make an extract of that stuff. And that has not been shown to be superior than the whole herb in this kind for inflammation, for whatever. You can have it in tablet, you can have it in capsule, in bulk. First of all, it won't hurt. Secondarily, I usually use it for inflammation, usually joint or blood vessel inflammation. If a person's got everything from high blood pressure to diabetes, I would use it.
What about
Turmeric what?
tea?
Seed?
Tea. Tea. Yeah.
I don't know. I've never drank it.
I've had turmeric.
I mean, do you put a teaspoon of turmeric in a cup of hot water?
No, they've come in a tea bag with turmeric. I use ginger and turmeric.
Well, I would like you to get 2 teaspoons of the actual herb, of the powdered herb a day. So however you get that in, I've heard of people making their own milk by taking a milk and putting their turmeric in and mix it up. They call it your yellow milk, but I've never heard of making a tea out of it.
Oh, they actually sell turmeric. But you say you take 2 teaspoons a day.
2 teaspoons is,
They make that information.
is considered a therapeutic dose. Or 6 capsules would be the same dose.
And you make a whole teaspoon.
What's that?
You make a whole
I don't know how well it's absorbed through the skin. Since it's a food, you put it through the intestinal tract. You know.
You just think, there's different ways.
You're saying 6 a day is the drop. Like
The-
take 6 a day now.
The turmeric as an herb, as a powdered herb, whole turmeric, for a therapeutic dose, if we're dealing with joints, digestive issues, cancer, that type of thing, we do 3 capsules twice a day. That's therapeutic.
And how much is each capsule? Milligrams and micrograms?
Runs about 500, we capsulate 500 to 600 milligrams. It takes 3 of those capsules to equal 1 teaspoon of the actual powder.
Maybe even 3 a day maybe, so
3 a day would be considered a maintenance dose.
right?
Remember, a lot of blood pressure, folks, is due to vessel wall inflammation.
That's right.
And they're not doing anything to treat the inflammation. They give you a drug that dilates the blood vessel. They don't really treat the real problem. The endothelium inside your arteries is a very sensitive tissue. And it's not just a piece of skin. It is a hormonal tissue. It does nitric oxide. It does a variety of chemicals that affect the vessel wall and vessel wall health. We're much more sophisticated than just dilating a plastic pipe, you know?
So if somebody does high blood pressure,
Yes.
should they go on some turmeric?
I would highly recommend it.
Okay, and like you said, 3.
Therapeutic dose would be 3 times 3.
3 times.
Yeah.
So are you saying take them all at once or not really?
If you are doing any dosing, the more you spread out, the better absorption you're going to get. That's true for anything. In general, how many people want to take 1 pill an hour for 12 hours? They go, that's all I do all day. Okay, so you go between that and saying, okay, what's reasonable? So many people are willing to take their herbs at mealtime, which is perfect because these are digested just like your food is. So if you take you got 2 meals a day, then take your turmeric, divide it in 2 doses. Either 3 and 3, or if you're on a maintenance thing, 2 and 1, or however you want to do it. Excuse me.
Getting the turmeric in bulk like that as opposed to the capsules, is that also acceptable? Or is it just
The thing about buying bulk is there's a lot of culinary turmeric in the United States. And that is what we call radiated when it comes into our country to make sure it's killing off the bugs. And I'm all for not having buggy stuff. But I also know that radiating a herb can also affect the chemistry of the herb. So I don't buy culinary turmeric. I don't go to the store and use that. I mean, we have, but I get bulk turmeric shipped into this country that is not radiated, specifically not radiated.
So if we don't have that advantage to do that.
I'm not saying your dietary turmeric is not doing you any good. I'm not saying that at all.
Should we look for capsules? And buy
Capsules, the reason we use capsules is strictly for convenience. The capsule doesn't make it any healthier.
No, I'm just saying so that you can get the amount that you buy 3 capsules a day instead of buying that, put it in capsules.
No, if you want in bulk, 1 teaspoon equals 3 capsules.
Oh, so 1 teaspoon in the morning, 1 teaspoon.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh.
If you want to take it that way,
I
that
bet
works.
you tablets.
Tablets would have to be compressed and they may have some fillers, so you see what other ingredients they have put with it.
I'll have to look at it, this is what I happen to have in my phone.
And the fillers don't have to be bad. Sometimes some of the companies may use something like slippery elm to be the filler or something like that, or another bulking thing. What's that? Reason it helps high blood pressure, because high blood pressure is a lot of times a result of vessel wall inflammation. But remember, turmeric's going to sound like snake oil. It is for your liver. It is one of your liver detoxifiers. It's going to help out your vessel walls. It's a general joint anti-inflammatory because most diseases in the body are a result of inflammation of some type or another. So if I can give you an anti-inflammatory, I help a whole host of problems. Why do you think going on a plant-based diet helps people? Because it's anti-inflammatory. It improves digestion. They don't have to spend as much of their energy fighting battles with their bad diet.
If someone is on blood pressure medication,
Mm-hmm.
will they see a reduction in their blood pressure by using the turmeric?
There's a touchy area there, and that is that I put a person on a healthy program. And I say, when your blood pressure comes back to 120 systolic, then we reduce your medication. I expect it to rebound a little bit. Then you work your way back to 120, and then we take you off a little more medication. And we seesaw back and forth until we have the best combination. Now, some are simple. These calcium channel blockers, I don't know whoever invented them, but they don't do a whole lot for people. You can say, why don't you get rid of that one? The ones that really make the difference are your beta blockers and your good old diuretics, the two basic phase 1 and phase 2 blood pressure control. And now they've got all this fancy stuff, and I'm going, you can take it. I go, watch, stop for a week, and I don't know, it doesn't make any difference. I go, well, that was an easy one to get rid of. You know. Most people that I have take the turmeric for a joint, for inflammation, joint.
You said I had arthritis with my back.
Yes, yeah.
And how much would you take on that?
I would take 3 capsules twice a day. Mm-hmm. Turmeric is, or turmeric, however you want to say it, is the most popular herb, probably, I don't know, 20% of all the herbs that I use. And it's not me doing it. And what I'm talking about is repeat business. People will take something once. But when they take it twice, when they take it 20 times, you go, they are getting benefit either psychologically, either placebo, or for some reason, it is definitely helping. Yeah. I don't, because I don't have that kind of volume and bulk to try to keep up with bulk herbs. I used to try to do bulk herbs, but it's a totally different level of business to try to keep up with, 20 pounds of this and 20 pounds of that. And I said, I'll do my little piece here. And everything what you see is handwork. Yeah. Okay. You are correct. First of all, I can't hurt you with it. That's the good news. The second good news is that if you deal with any kind of inflammation, it's not just helping the joint. It's everything. And if you're tired of being tired, then get rid of inflammation out of your body. Most of the fatigue that people have is due to the body having more battles to fight than energy to do it. It's not just a matter of saying, well, I guess I'm getting old. Well, we all are. But
So you have in your letter or pamphlet you send us every now and then, you sell us.
correct, that is on the list. You are right. Yeah, that should be there. Let's go on with colon cancer, because I want to show you how good this turmeric is in this one area. And the research on turmeric is probably hundreds, if not thousands, of research articles done on this. This is probably one of the best researched herbs we have. We looked at a country that uses turmeric as a spice, as a seasoning in a lot of their diet, whether it's curry, et cetera, et cetera. And here's what we found out. Turmeric, India versus United States. Okay, in the United States, women in the United States have 10 times the colon cancer rate as women in India. And this isn't just saying, well, we live longer in the United States. In other words, age would be obvious. This taking that out of the component. We're looking at comparable results. The women in the United States have 7 times more lung cancer, while we probably smoke more than in India. And they have 5 times more breast cancer in the United States versus what they have in India. Men in the United States have 11 times more colon and rectal cancer compared to India, 23 times more prostate cancer, and 7 times more lung cancer. And India eats 7%, 7% of those in India eat meat daily. So 93% of Indians do not eat meat daily. So you see, we're trying to be a little bit fair here. We want to give turmeric proper credit, but there's a whole lot lower protein, a whole lot less meat intake. Now let's look at India. Okay, so in India, we go the opposite, okay? In India, we're going to say that if a man in India has 1 case of colon cancer, we would have 11 per 100 over here. That's what you have to look at those numbers. Colon cancer and diet, increased refined fat increases colon cancer risk. It slows transit time, we talked about that. Unsaturated fat produces free radicals. And use whole food fats if you're going to use any fats at all. And those would be obviously flax seed, chia seed, nuts would qualify, avocados would qualify, olives qualify. See, you don't want to be on a fat-free diet. It's not healthy. But when you understand how God made broccoli, He put fat in that. About 7% of the calories in broccoli are fat. So God doesn't, there is no food that I can name for you that grows naturally that is totally fat-free or totally devoid of protein. It just doesn't exist. That's why I smile when they're still saying that soy is a complete protein. I'm going, guys, come on. You went to Loma Linda, you should learn this. There's no such thing as an incomplete protein. God didn't make incomplete proteins. Now, He made some foods with more amino acids than other foods, but the food in and of itself has got enough of the amino acids to make my insulin, my skin, my hair, my nails, etc. Fiber, water-soluble and water-insoluble. Water-soluble fibers are those that get gelatinous. That's your oatmeal. That's your pectin in the apple. Water-insoluble is your wheat bran. It goes in, I should say it different. It comes out the same way it goes in. It isn't digestible. It is strictly bulk. It is a broom. It keeps things clean and moves things through. But no matter what fiber you're eating, you have to drink your water. You can't just eat fiber and expect good things. You have to eat fiber and put enough water with it, because fiber will absorb the water and can actually constipate people. You have to drink your water and your fiber as a combination, and it will improve transit time. And berries, as in almost any berry you name, can suppress cancer cell growth in the colon. One of the best berries with the most detoxifying potential is strawberries. The seeds in a strawberry have more detoxifying potential than about any other berry that I know of. Absolutely phenomenal what they do for the intestinal tract. Preventing colon cancer in summary, a plant-based diet improves transit time. There is no heme iron from an animal source. It's high in fiber. It gives healthy bowel bacteria. Healthy bowel bacteria is something that you want, because the bacteria is the edge that breaks down the food in the large intestine. It breaks down and ferments things so that it can be properly processed. You still process food in your large intestine, and some is still absorbed. Most of your absorption takes place in the small bowel. The large intestine is your dehydrator. the literally fluid that comes into the large bowel, the best it is probably like a thickened broth or something. And it's got to go from that to a formed stool in a matter of 5 feet later. And so the function of the large bowel, pull fluid out, pull fluid out. Well, where's all that fluid going? Into your bloodstream. Now you see the importance of the bacterial interface. Undigested or poorly digested food can be more digested with the bacteria in the bowel, and proper digestion in the large intestine can help you improve your absorption. Now, what if you've got bad bacteria in the bowel? It's going to affect everything from your immune system. It's going to tell the body that it can't break this down correctly. It's going to irritate the bowel wall. And now, I don't like to say this, but I'm actually seeing bacterial infections in the small intestine. They should never be there. God put basically lymph tissue, your adenoids and your tonsils here at the top of your throat. He put strong stomach acid in the stomach, which should kill bacteria. By the time the food gets to your small intestine, it should not be or have any bacteria in it. And then it goes all the way through to the other end of the small intestine, and you've got an appendix. Well, what's an appendix for? Well, that's more immune system, more lymph tissue, and that should kill off any bacteria that tries to get in from the bottom end. Now, I have a question for you. Why are we swallowing probiotics? Because they tell us that's good for us, and we need good bacteria. But where do the probiotics go? Into the stomach with all that acid. Most of them get killed. And then if they go into the small intestine where they don't belong, we've got another problem there. And we finally, a hope of them, or a few of them, are finally going to get to the large intestine. You may not want to hear this, but if you really want to put probiotics where they really belong, you got to take an enema. That is the best way to plant the garden. Put good, better yet, do everything you can not to take an antibiotic. Antibiotics to me aren't for convenience sake. They're life and death sake. And I'm not going to tell you not to take an antibiotic and die. I'm not there, okay? On the other hand, I would tell you that you don't need an antibiotic for an earache or for a hanged toenail or for even an infection on your hand. There's too many other ways to take care of and clean things up and do everything. I'm not saying that antibiotics haven't saved people's lives. I believe they have. But I feel we've gotten antibiotic crazy. And they've ruined. Oh yeah, they don't even get seen anymore. You know. So we haven't gotten out of that. So I'm back to talking with the customers here. Don't buy into that. Do everything you can. I'm not saying probiotics are bad. I'm just saying that what I would recommend is you put the good bacteria where it belongs, and you will be much more effective in doing it that way. I didn't say it was fun. I just said it was the best way to do it. But if you don't take steroids and if you don't take antibiotics, you shouldn't probably need that. My wife used to put an antibiotic solution, mouthwash, in her water pick, and then she goes, wait a minute, what am I doing here? All the good bacteria in my mouth, I can still water pick, I can still clean my teeth, I don't still have to have bad breath, I can do all this and still maintain normal, oral, good bacteria. There's 3 types of bacteria in your mouth that produce B12. So if anything in the morning, get up, smile at yourself, and drink your water, and don't spit anything out. We don't know where B12 comes from yet, totally, for the vegan. We just don't know. We can speculate here and speculate there, like I am a little bit here, but we can't explain to you why vegans have less B12 deficiency than meat eaters. But when you walk in the office, the first thing the doctor will say, if he checks you out, you're a vegetarian, he'll go, oh, we need B12. I'll go, Doc, how do you know? because it's more likely that you need B12 than I do from the research on pernicious anemia.
I should have told him that because I was thinking B12 because of saying he is
Mm-hmm.
B12. Well, when he did my blood work, my B12 was
Sky high.
high.
Yeah.
So he was, you don't need to take B12.
Yeah. That's what I'm seeing now. I'm seeing vegans and people that take B12. I think the highest level I've seen was over 3,000. And 600 is good, by the way.
Isn't that an animal product?
It is a bacteria product.
No, but when you take B12, is that an animal?
It's from bacteria.
Okay.
Now, it's one of those things, you know, fungus is on the vegetable side and bacteria is on the animal side. We're down there in the one cell area, but you've got, let me back up. B12 is only made by bacteria. It's not made by a cow. It's not made by anybody else. If the cow has B12, it's because it got it from bacteria. It grazed too close to the cow pies. How's that? No, I'm being serious. And people have the nerve to tell me that I want you to use dairy products to make sure you get your B12. I'm going, I'm sorry. Dairy products only have B12 due to fecal contamination. They had to get that bacteria in the milk somehow because the milk, if you extract it before it goes through the udder, it basically has no B12. It's called a trace. I mean, and B12 is measured in not milligrams, it's measured in micrograms. That's 1/1,000,000th of 1 gram. And it didn't have that. It had only a trace of that. We're talking minuscule here. And so milk is contaminated with bacteria either from the cow, either from the barn, either from the milk vat, either from the milk truck, I don't know where. And then it's pasteurized. So now I've got a bottle of dead bacteria. But it didn't get them all because if you don't believe me, don't put it in the fridge. And set it on the table. What will happen with your 2 quarts of milk in a few days on the table? Well, hopefully you'll get it before it bursts and you come home with a mess. If there was no bacteria in it, what would have happened? Nothing. So pasteurization knocks down the bacterial count so it will last your 6, 8, or 10 days. That's all it does. And by the way, you can have bacteria in soy milk and bacteria in almond milk, so I'm not trying to just pick on cow's milk. It's a matter of the same thing. Bacteria is what ferments and what produces carbon dioxide and what blows containers apart. That's what people say. Well, I use sauerkraut because it's got all those good cultures in it, you know. I said, really? Do you realize that if your can of sauerkraut had cultures in it, it'd be all blown up on the shelf at the supermarket and they wouldn't have anything left? It's like, oh, there's no culture in that. That's just sour cabbage. Well, put it in a jar. If it blows up, you know you got the real stuff in there. If it doesn't blow up, you don't have bacteria. It's not good bacteria. Bacteria will grow.
When Grandma used to make it, it would raise up the lid.
Okay, what did she put in there?
Salt.
Salt. Guess what salt does to bacteria? Yeah. Salt is one of your most effective antibiotics. That's why wounds do so good at the beach. You go out there and you're wading out water and that, man, you go, well, I'm healing up good. It must be the vacation. Most kraut is cured by salt. If there was any bacterial fermentation, either initially or somewhere along the way, maybe just soften it up a little bit, by the time they laid the salt to it, the bacteria can't live in that. If it could, it would continue to go rotten and rotten. And if you've ever been in a field of cabbage that has gone rotten, there is nothing more raunchy probably than that. Slimy, rotten cabbage is something your nose will remember, and that's not kraut. And you definitely wouldn't eat it. Now, same thing. When they make cheese, they rot milk with bacteria, but how they control how rotten the milk gets? By dumping salt in there. Salt is what controls the fermentation process in cheese. That's why cheese is so salty. They had to add it. It's not that salty from the cow. So this is, but see, we're talking about old techniques of how they cured and saved their food through the winter. I mean, why does smoking work for meat? Well, technically it doesn't, just kills off some of the bacteria. So they used to have the smoke houses, and they used to use cured stuff, and they would salt their hams. All salt was a good antibiotic. You know, that's how they kept it through the whole winter. It's amazing our forefathers made it, isn't it? Now they probably look at us and wonder how we made it. Anyway, how to get in all that?
Is nutritional yeast better?
What's that?
Nutritional yeast, does that have to be developed?
Only if it has been added. We say it does, so it has to be added. It has to have some kind of bacterial, it has to have some kind of contamination to have it in there. Seriously, I've done my homework on B12. B12 only comes from bacteria. And yeast is not a bacteria. They tell us it does. I happen to believe it does. But I don't think it's, I'll do some more checking. I don't think it's from the yeast. But you know how they make the nutritional yeast. Basically, you have a yeast slurry. It's a liquid form. And they basically either freeze dry it or they dry it on a very hot drum by spraying it in there. It hits the side of the drum and dries instantly, and the flakes just keep coming off. I'm not saying it's a bad food. I'm just saying that I'd have to figure out how it gets the B12, because I've heard the same thing.
Well, I never thought about it.
And we like it because it gives it that cheddar cheese, that effect, and tastes good. It's pleasing to the taste buds. Okay. Preventing colon cancer, summary here. Improves transit time, no hemoglobin iron, no blood-based iron, high in fiber, healthy bowel bacteria, that's what we got to. Lowers cholesterol, plant-based diet now. Lowers fat, helps weight control, and best use of earth resources. I think we've already covered that. Prostate cancer, we've got to talk about men here a little bit. Most men don't realize this. But in populations where they never eat eggs, it becomes really remarkable. Now, this is a little bit anecdotal, but the story is told about Indians, I don't remember which tribe it was, that would not eat eggs. But the one man in the tribe who ate eggs got the problem. Now, that doesn't mean everyone does. But here, this is what the research is showing. Hormones and growth factors stimulate prostate growth. Insulin-like growth factor down here we're talking about would be one of those hormones and growth factors that stimulate prostate cancer. So for a man to take hormones, he really has to evaluate what he's doing. The problem is he never thinks of taking hormones by drinking a glass of milk, does he? Exactly. So these hormones and growth factors are coming from the cow. Some of you, I like my patients to educate me. This one lady come in, she owns a dairy farm. And so I want to know what the top cow is. How many gallons, they don't go by gallons anymore, they go by pounds. You know, how many pounds of milk does this cow produce? Her top producer at that time was 115 pounds of milk a day. That's a lot of milk. Okay, water is 8 pounds per gallon. Milk is a little lighter than water because it's got some fat in it, and fat is, you know, floats, water sinks, so to speak. So if we go with 7.5 pounds divided by 115, you're looking at what, 15 gallons of milk a day? One cow, 15 gallons a day, and guess what that cow does? No. You can't produce that kind of milk on grass. They milk, go to the feedlot, they milk, go to the feedlot, and they milk them either 2 or 3 times a day. Standard is twice. But they do not get out and graze. They go out and they eat their stimulants, they eat their hormones, they eat their silage, they eat. You can't produce that kind of milk unless you're on a diet that can produce that kind of milk. They can't afford to let them out and go grazing because the milk production will go down. That is spoon-fed, silage, chopped up, you know, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. 115 pounds. That is a factory, not an animal. Yeah. So we have milk production at an incredible all-time high. I would have never guessed that. 3 gallons would seem like a pretty hefty cow to me. 15 gallons? Growth stimulants, hormones. Eggs increase 2 times the spread. Remember, we're saying a person has prostate cancer by eating eggs to get 2 times the spread or metastasis of breast cancer. Prostate cancer. Eating eggs once a day compared to rarely eating eggs at all. So eating eggs once a day as compared to not eating them hardly at all is twice the spread, metastatic in that group. Poultry, 4 times cancer progression. Chicken, an insulin-like growth factor, the higher the IGF-1, the greater the developing age. IGF-1 is high in milk. Now I'm going to tell you something about soy, because I want to put it in proper perspective. Soy protein concentrate and soy protein isolate are 2 components that have a higher IGF factor rating than cow's milk. And we put that in our smart dogs, we put it in a lot of our foods. Whenever you see that word, soy protein concentrate, which means they've basically taken the soy protein and purified it, it can cause a greater effect on stimulating growth. And this is where cancer has gotten its this is where soy has gotten its bad name. We're not talking soybeans, we're not talking tofu, we're not talking soy milk. When you concentrate the soy protein and purify it like that, then I happen to believe those studies that say that soy causes cancer. I just want them to be fair to the public and say, we evaluated a concentrated product from soy that caused this problem. You see the headline, soybeans, I'm going, well, folks, be fair. You're not being fair. Soy protein concentrate and soy protein isolate. It pretty much means the same thing.
And it has a higher IGF-1 than what is milk or eggs or
Milk.
than milk.
The comparison that I have is the milk compared to soy protein concentrated foods are twice the effect on growth of tissue than the IGF in milk. And the reason I say that is because I'm poo-pooing the dairy industry, but it's not fair to not tell you the rest of the story when we look at our own foods that we think that are healthy and misuse them. Animal protein in, yes.
Under that IGF,
Mm-hmm.
it said it had a factor of 1. And what you're saying is...
No, IGF-1 is the name of the product,
Oh, is the name of the product.
which means there must be IGF-2 and 3 and 4. Insulin-like growth factor 1 is the compound name.
And those 2 products
Right.
is twice the effect of the...
IGF-1, correct. Twice the effect on stimulating tissue growth. Now, all stimulation of tissue growth doesn't mean a person has cancer. But when I see an 8-year-old that weighs 180 pounds, I really feel sorry for the child, because the child doesn't have its own person yet to even make a decision to say, Mom, I don't want to eat that much. And you will almost always likely find an obese parent. So I realize there's a psychological component here. But the one who really gets hurt to me is the 8-year-old, because they've set themselves up for a life that they're going to have to be fighting harder than they should have to. And then they come home in tears from 3rd grade and say, Mom, why did everybody not want to play with me? And why am I this big? And why am I this? And why am I that? If I was a parent, I think that would be enough to tear you up. Especially when you realize that you may be the cause. How'd I get on that? Here we go. Preventing breast... Boy, why I got that on my brain. Prostate cancer. Animal protein in general, not just milk. Animal protein in general stimulates insulin-like growth factor 1 production muscle proteins in the meat, in the egg whites, and in the milk all produce and stimulate the production. And why do we call it a total gradient? So that, I'm going to shut this down.
What better company can we have? There you go. That's like, I wonder if it's that scammer. Always have a wedding. Was it wedding? A wedding or wedding reception? Well, reception. Right, there's a lot of space on one.
So anyway, the healthy outcome would be paid back manyfold in industry if you handle it that way. And right now, I think that they could entice more people to be healthy because more people are more concerned about their paycheck than anything else. On the other hand, if they would get people to cooperate with realizing what medicine can do and what they can't do, and some people go to the emergency room, and most people I talk to are disappointed about their emergency room visit. Not just the price tag, what they really got out of it. They go, I won't do that again. So then we offer a whole nother course, and industry hasn't taken me up on this one. There's a whole course of when you decide to go for medical care. So we try to educate people what they need to do and when they really do need medical help and when they don't. Because we have numerous people that come to an emergency room that really shouldn't be there. In fact,
They don't know what else to do. So
they don't, and it's not blame, it's just a matter of saying we should have a clinic next door that they come into the emergency room and they get screened and don't meet the criteria. Say, well, Mrs. Jones, sore throats are next door. Your infected toenail is next door. If you're not having a heart attack, that's what we're about here.
Yeah, it's not an emergency a lot of times.
Most people go there because the emergency room is legally set up where they have to treat you. But I think they should also have saying, you will be treated, but it'll be in the clinic next door.